After being emotionally scarred by the third season of The Shield Hero, I decided that it was still not enough. I must persist in search of the hidden banger of fall 2023. And that was when my eyes were caught by the beautiful bird face of the protagonist of Shangri-La Frontier. And so I jumped right into Shangri-La Frontier Trash Game Hunter Challenges God Tier Game to find out if this was truly the hidden gem I was looking for. And after catching up with the first 9 episodes as of the time of this recording, I must say that Shanfro is definitely one of the most entertaining anime of this season. Shanfro follows energy drink enthusiast and fellow elite gamer Sanraku in his quest to stop playing the usual trashy games that he plays and for once have an actual decent gaming experience as he goes into the God tier game Shangri-La Frontier. And of course, his mad skills shine through in a game that actually has responsive controls and fair hitboxes. Surrounding Sanraku, we also have quite an eccentric cast, ranging from the most awkward love interest ever to a psycho model that likes to PvP. The premise is pretty simple. This isn't one of those anime that will leave you by the window looking at the scenery, contemplating life, but it's a pretty fun and entertaining experience, and sometimes that's just what I'm here for. Unlike some other series that tackle this gaming genre, Shanfro works because it doesn't take itself super seriously. It knows its target audience and is not super story driven and is instead more focused on the entertainment aspects. So at certain points in the story where it stretches your credibility or has some goofier moments, it doesn't really break immersion for the viewer. Generally speaking, I don't like when series do this narrative whiplash where they're goofy comedy and all of a sudden try to have a super serious scene. There are very few series that can pull this off, one of them being Gintama of course, but besides that I prefer when series just pick a vibe and stick with it, and Shanfro's vibe is very fun. I started watching this completely blind, and as soon as I saw those VR goggles, I just cringed and thought to myself, oh boy, this isn't another bad Sword Art Online clone, is it? And thankfully, it wasn't. The immediate thing that stands out about Shanfro is that it was clearly written by a gamer for gamers, and it really shows. From the parodies to other famous games, to the more intricate details that gamers will chuckle at, such as stepping out of bounds or abusing an enemy hitbox or complaining about the annoying NPC. These narrative eye winks are appreciated by the viewer and help the viewer be more immersed in this world as these gaming elements are so realistic. Knowing your target audience and the actual world and intricacies of what you're trying to write about is very important and can make or break immersion. The most egregious example of a gaming element done wrong that I can think of the top of my head is in Season 2 of SAO when they introduced the character creation in Gun Gale Online, where the character's appearance is completely randomized. My first thought, and the thought of anyone watching that episode, was, this is completely stupid, nobody would play this game. And the opposite is true for Shangri-La Frontier. It seems like a pretty fun game and honestly I would probably enjoy playing it. And Shanfro as a series not only flexes its game knowledge but also seems to really know the communities that are part of these games, which also help the world feel more alive. Things like the small little communities that are made when games are super small and so everybody ends up knowing each other, or the peculiar games where the community ends up hijacking the game from the developers and take it in a direction they didn't expect, such as the episode on Unite Rounds where it was just a slogfest to grind and players could PvP, so they end up just stealing everything from each other. These episodes are very fun and also super believable and make the world feel more alive. It shows that the author knows what he's writing about. And I really appreciate that Shanfro actually shows other games, because usually the cliche in these types of series is that either the characters are stuck in the video game or for some strange reason these avid gamers only play one single game, which is very strange and unrealistic. And of course the main crew of sweaty nerds meet each other in other games and gain respect for each other based on their mad gamer skills. Gamers, rise up, this is much more entertaining than the usual power of friendship. Now, the series usually plays along 3 main settings: the Shangri-La Frontier game, the real-life setting, and the other games. I've already spoken about how I enjoy the other games. Usually every time they're a nice nod to something that the viewer can relate with, and they help bring more believability to this world and are also incredibly entertaining. As for the real-life scenes, I will say these are probably the worst in the series. Turns out if you put these socially inept video game addicted nerds in real-life situations, they're not as entertaining. Shocking. Thankfully, the series doesn't focus on the real-life scenes too much. It uses them very strategically, sprinkle them in once in a while to help as a breather from the game, bring more anticipation to the game itself, and gives us a nice reminder that this is in fact not an isekai. My man Sanraku may be gaming late into the night, but he still has a life and responsibilities, such as buying more energy drinks to fuel his gaming sessions. The romance plotline, if I can even call it that, is more of a running gag than an actual romance, so I personally find it quite amusing. It makes me laugh at how incredibly awkward the Atakuho, the girl, is in real life, and it brings a nice spin on the usual cliche of oblivious MC and awkward and shy love protagonist, because this one, while very shy, does actually progress in the relationship, just very slowly. So about the actual game Shangri-La Frontier, it is presented as a casual game with some hardcore elements that is played by a lot of players. I like how they explicitly say there are lots of guides available, but the MC likes to make it more difficult for himself because he simply jumps ahead without reading anything. There are only two types of gamers, those that read every single line of dialogue and talk with every NPC, or those that Sanraku that just skip all the cutscenes and try to speedrun things as much as possible. The story itself does an incredible job at making this video game world feel super expansive even if we haven't actually seen much. This is mostly because we follow Sanraku, who plays as a solo player and hasn't interacted with many other players yet, and because the story intentionally skips the boring things such as level grinding, item acquisition, and questing because those would be boring. So it's a nice series that knows its audience. It lets the audience fill in the gaps because we know how these things work and lets the story focus on the more interesting things. I like the progression of having normal enemies, slightly stronger enemies, the area bosses, and obviously the mythical, unique monsters. It makes the game feel very MMORPG-ish. Everything is familiar, but with a cool spin on it because it's so well presented. I love the gaming elements such as the particles whenever a monster is defeated or the critical hit indicator. It really ups the entertainment value for me as it makes it feel more like a game that I'm just watching a walkthrough of. However, there are things in this series that come across as quite nonsensical and just overly convenient to the story, like Sanraku being able to hide in sheets or jump across roofs, and the worst of all, being able to hold several high-level players by himself. I don't care how mad skilled you are, in an MMORPG, the higher level players will just beat you because their stats are bigger than yours. Big number beats small number, just no hard feelings dude, but it's how it works. So while Sanraku does have a bit of main character syndrome, and there are certain elements that stretch a bit of believability, and it's clear that the author's headspace in that moment is not writing a video game but a normal fantasy world, it's okay because once again the overall presentation is so fun that the viewer can kind of overlook these things. As I said, the overall comedic tone of this series also helps the viewer take it less seriously and have a bit more levity when watching it. The only thing this series did, which in my opinion was a serious mistake, was giving Sanraku that item that halved his XP but doubled his stat gains. Every gamer would grind the hell out of that item, and the fact that he didn't is super unrealistic. So Shangri-La Frontier is a super fun series to watch. I will say it is a bit gatekeepy. If you're not familiar with RPGs or MMORPGs, you may be a bit confused by it as the series really plays into the viewer's knowledge of those games, but besides that, it's super fun and honestly one of the hidden gems of this season. The animation is way smoother than it has any right to be, the fights are engaging and dynamic, and the opening is a banger! It's just a great series to just turn off your brain and enjoy the show. No, I was isekai'd. No, my friends are in danger. No, the fate of the world is in my hands. Just a bunch of dudes and ladies being gamers and gaming. Be sure to check out Shanfro if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next one. Be sure to like and subscribe and all the good stuff, and ciao!